Hello, guys. David Vose here. Beautiful day, and it's actually raining. I think it's going to rain for 2 or 3 hours, off and on, out of the blue, because it was supposed to be sunny today. And I woke up this morning and turned on the weather app because it was a little cloudy to see, well, okay, is it going to rain or when's the sun coming out? Because I knew from yesterday that it was supposed to be sunny. Been sunny for weeks, up in the 60s. And I looked on there and it came up sunny. I'm like, it's not sunny. And it said it was supposed to be sunny. So I waited a second and then it loaded and it flipped and it said, no, we're going to have rain for several hours. So I don't know how these weather maps don't know that the rain is coming several hours before it comes. And then all of a sudden it comes and they're like, oh, yeah, it's going to rain. So that's odd. It kind of feels like it just snuck up on us. Maybe we're getting some of that California rain. But I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm having a wonderful day. And I wanted to share some revelations I had with you last night. I've been trying to have this revelation. I've been trying to understand how did people, say natives, eat, survive. You hear tell that they had corn, they grew corn or something. But if you look around here, there's not a lot of water. I'm not sure how they had irrigation for the crops and stuff. But there certainly were large communities throughout the desert here, throughout the canyons and cliffs. And I've shown you several videos where there are ruins, and it appears that many of the mesas that you see throughout where I'm walking, and there were mesa-like structures on the tops of the mesas. Mesa-like structures. There were definitely arrowheads and rocks stacked up and visible, what's left of visible walls and so forth that were on top of these mesas. I notice a lot of these little caves that have rocks stacked up where they could go inside. A lot of people believe that this is where the native peoples used to live, inside these little, up in the cliffs, on the side of these mesas. And I'm like, okay, first of all, why is one cave enough to maybe sleep one person, maybe two? No apparent fireplace or anything, just a hole in the wall with some rocks. And you always find one or two or several around a mesa on the cliff. And people think, oh, well, why did they live here? Probably for protection. Get up off the ground. They can see people coming. But what nobody's said, I've never heard anyone say. And by the way, one of my favorite individuals that used to go out through Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona around here and document these places just passed away. And it's so crazy. He died of brain injuries from a drunk driver. And Andrew, he was called the Desert Drifter. He did lots of videos. I'm kind of tearing up right now. Sorry, I don't know why, but and I didn't know him, and I used to watch some of his videos, and he passed away, and that's sad. But I have thought that, well, I have proven to myself, because around here I have been walking everywhere and I figured out something. They didn't live in those little caves on the sides of the cliffs, little holes like a rat's nest. That was lookout position. There were probably young men that were stationed around the perimeter of these mesas. And a mesa is like a flat top hill. But these mesas are straight down on the side. You can't just climb up real quickly. And so they lived on top the mesa. And I can see that all these mesa have ruins. Literally, walls were there, and they had good sized rooms, not like little rat holes in the sides of the cliff. The people that were stationed there were lookouts to see if anybody was coming to protect them. Evidently, they needed protection quite a bit. From time to time, raiders would come through, steal their food. Perhaps it was hard to get food, and people were trying to get food, or maybe it wasn't food they were after. Maybe they were after their young women to take them away for wives, or whatever it is that they were doing, protecting their women and children, their food. They put it on top of the mountain, and they obviously there's no creeks or rivers up there, so they had to have people. They probably had young men that would climb down the mountains, go down to the bottom, get water, pack it back up, enough for each of the individuals to cook with up there, because they probably lived up there and slept up there for protection. But then during the day, they may have went down the mountain, all of them, and meandered around and went to the creeks and bathed and went hunting and that kind of thing. Maybe even did some agricultural gardening down on the bottom. But they would bring that up to the top and cook and live and sleep there where it was safe. I think these little holes or cliffs that are in the perimeter of the mesas were just to look out. But that's just my thoughts. Now, some of them, like Mesa Verde and others that you have seen, they're very complex and certainly do have more extensive architectural remains and rooms and stairways and stuff. And there are not that many of them on the sides of cliffs. Usually those are built into some large caves. I think it's probably feasible that there were some larger areas, not little cubby holes, but big, massive caves back inside, holes that were big enough where people could live. But for the most part, they lived on top of these mesas. And these little caves around the perimeter for hundreds and hundreds of miles around here, all the way up through Utah, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, all the way through. You see the same thing. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about. But I am fascinated with this ancient culture because I do not believe this looks like a civilization. I know there was a grand civilization, but it looks like that civilization is either so old that it's crumbled and it's gone, and it was on top of the plateaus, and there are maybe massive cities that we just haven't been able to reconstruct or whatever. But I have witnessed the great temples and magnificent megaliths that are in the eastern part of the United States, in Tennessee area where I was, in Alabama. The Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee border around Chattanooga. It's the most beautiful place I've ever been. I'm sure it's even prettier further north. I don't know. I never really went into the Appalachians up that far. But where I was, the weather is perfect. There's no bugs or, it was just so beautiful. And there were these huge megalithic temples there. And I've since learned that there was a vast civilization that was from Venezuela, Peru, and went through the Caribbean, up through Cuba and Florida and up into Tennessee and all the way up. This was a vast civilization. The people that were in South America are the same people that were there in Tennessee, and they were called the Nephites. But what I really wanted to talk about today, this great revelation that I've been having, is something I've been searching for. I just know in my bones that there is food everywhere in the world. Just plenty of food. But mankind has come to a place where we don't know anything about this. The knowledge has been lost. Oh, sure, there's some old books you can find, back to Eden and things where people say, oh, you can eat this weed, or you can eat that weed, or but the problem is we don't know what these weeds are. Oh, don't confuse it with that or the hemlock, you'll die. You don't eat none of the mushrooms because one of them is probably poison, so nobody eats anything. And they're all superfoods, but we don't know where they are, how to get them. We don't think they would taste good. We're like, what? I've tried naan on a weed and it didn't taste good to me. Well, try naan on a potato you pull out of the ground. Ain't any more tasty than a yucca root. Or, try naan on an old bean that grows out of the ground. I have recently found out in a very interesting way some food that I now have available where I or anyone not only could survive, but live healthy, much healthier than we are now. Because the actual food that I'm going to tell you about today that's just growing everywhere all over the place, winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you gotta do is call and I'll come running to see you again. Yeah, it's all there. I guarantee it. And I'm going to tell you what it is. And you got to watch. All of you should be so interested in this, should be so full of, awe and wonder about this. Because literally, I used to wonder, well, how in the world could you live in the woods? I know you can eat pine cones. Okay, great. But I don't know that I could eat pine cones every day. I'd probably miss my, I don't know, loaf of bread and peanut butter and nuts and real pecans and almonds and potatoes and onions and all the broccoli and things. And unless you got some seeds and you grow and you water it every year. And water is another thing that I've determined. I understand how they survived out here without a lot of water or creeks. There is water, but okay, there's so much I want to tell you. It's unbelievable. It all started. I was sitting here last night thinking about, or maybe I saw a picture of some pine needles and nuts, and basically what my mind was seeing is the little buds or tips of junipers have them, the firs have them, the pinyons and pines. Never go for ponderosas or lodgepole. Those are poison, or they say they're toxic. But most of the other pine trees, especially white pine, sugar pine, and normal, like pinyons and that kind of thing, junipers, are all edible. And I was thinking about these, they call them the male cones. So a lot of these pine trees will produce a pine cone, I guess it's a female. And then, but I guess usually before the pine cone comes on, which by the way, you can also pick green and boil them and roast them, and they can be eaten. You can collect them just like any other kind of fruit. And they're not just edible, they're healthy and good for you. But of course, that's something you have to get in season. You have to make sure you're there all year. Certain seasons for the acorns and the pine nuts and the pine cones and even the pine needles. And I'll tell you something about pine needles here in a minute. But usually they just put that in some hot water and boil it and make a tea. But what I was talking, the male cones are like where the pollen is. I guess why it's a male, because it's got the pollen to produce its seed and spread it throughout the forest. And it's like almost like the end of a little pine twig, but there's this little bud-like thing about 1.5 inches long, sometimes 1 inch, 2 inches long, that has like pollen around it in the spring. And it's a very tender little shoot, like asparagus or something, Not that it probably doesn't taste like asparagus, but it does taste good and nutty and a little pollen-y and wild, but good. It tastes pretty good. But I was thinking about those little buds and little pine cones. You see there in the picture, that's juniper, and the tips of them are very edible. And then, of course, the juniper has these berries too, the juniper berries, which I'm going to tell you about as well here in just a second. So, during the year, all of these little male cones or spruce or fir, pine sprouts, whatever they are, with pollen, fall to the ground. Pine needles fall to the ground, pinyon nuts, acorns, lots of stuff, little pine cones, everything falls to the ground. And if you go under a juniper or a pinyon tree, you'll see this ground cover. And it looks like what you see on the screen, a little bit, but that's not the exact picture I wanted to show you, but you do get the idea. You can kind of just pick that stuff up and go through it, and you'll find the little sprigs and the nuts and seeds and all these little things. Even some dry pine needles ain't going to hurt you because they're edible. Although once they've dried out, they're mostly fibrous and they're not very digestible. But you can make tea or grind them to make flour. But you probably wouldn't use just pine needles for flour. But you can grind them up and add that into your flour and add pine nuts and whatever you might be able to find. And one of the bulk things that you can literally find is these spruce tips, pinyon male cones with the pollen on it, and all these little wonderful treats that are highly edible. And you can boil them and eat them raw. You can roast them, or you can grind them and make a flour. And this is just all over. Even in the winter, you can go under the pinyons and junipers and collect all of this stuff. And you can get bags full of it. I mean, it's just everywhere. In the spring, you can just pick it off the tree, and that's probably where you should get it normally, and harvest it and put it in bags and dry it yourself. But if you're just out stranded in the wilderness, remember you can go under the trees and pick up this stuff and grind it with a rock, hard rock, and a rock that's got a hole. There are lots of these holes around here, just on the tops of the rocks, like little indentations. And you can put your grains there and get a bigger rock and just kind of grind it that way. You don't need electric grinders either. Isn't it weird? You don't need all the stuff they're telling you need to live. You don't need blenders and grinders and electricity. And I'll tell you how to get your water and your food and vegetables and fresh vegetables all over the desert. Berries and fruit that grow several months out of the year. We'll show you all of this. And it's not just something that you have to go around scrounging for. It's everywhere. Once you find out that all the pine needles and the little tips, the tender tips especially, and the green pine cones and all the nuts and things are all available in the acorns, and you can grind it all up and make a flour and add other things that we're going to show you here, it'll blow your mind. There's no reason that anyone should ever starve if you're living anywhere in the world where you've got nature. And because we just never thought that most all the trees that's growing all around us is full of fruit, vegetables. You know, you got the yuccas, and the yuccas have these fruits hanging off of them at certain times of year. If you're there in the winter, you can dig up the roots. But all of this is not only good for you and tasty superfoods. We got the mullein on the right there. The stuff on the left is purslane, and this is succulent salad. I mean, it's beautiful. Has these beautiful. This is all over the ground out here in around my house. Literally right outside my window and in my garden, growing up by itself. I'm trying to plant a garden, right? And oh, what's this? A weed. I'm like, oh, get this weed out of here. I'm pulling it up and throwing it into the chickens, hoping they'll eat it. And they're like eating it up. They love it. It's like the most succulent salad, vegetable you've ever had is this vegetable that grows all over around my cabin and around this area here in New Mexico called purslane. Purslane is delicious. I love it. You could literally eat that most of the summer and survive on that alone. But, we've all heard about some of these things. One thing you need to do, you've got AI now. And before this great time of trouble hits, and it's gonna, get on your phone and start looking where you're going to be. Hopefully you're not in a city. You got to get out of the city, go to the Rocky Mountains, but look on AI and find out in your locality just ask AI what foods are edible that are native to my county, right where I'm at, get the pictures, find out how to prepare it and eat it so you're going to be prepared. You've heard of amaranth? That grows where I'm at. Now I'm just dealing with the county right around my cabin. That grows everywhere. There's even psychedelic stuff that, Jimson weed that you got to be very careful with because, if you take too much, it can be toxic. But there is just wild, not far from here, there's peyote. But the amaranth, you see those huge plumes of seeds that can be ground and make flour with it. It grows in the desert where I'm at, grows in other places, not so deserty, but it grows in large swaths of the mountains, of the Rocky Mountains, and you can identify it so easily. It's these tall stalks and got all this grain at the end. It's something you can make your bread, your biscuits, your pancakes, stuff that not only could you survive, of course, but you will thrive. It's healthier than flour you get at the store. Way healthier. It's got it's a superfood. It's got all these nutrients. But here's the thing I wanted to tell you about. This is another thing, other than the little pollen male cones. I was thinking about these juniper berries because all last year and the year before, I was thinking, man, look at all these juniper berries. But though they are edible, they're not the greatest food to taste. I mean, they're okay. They're not as sweet as normal berries. They're a little tart and a little bitter, but you can eat them and they're sweet too. They're kind of sweet. They make gin with it. But, it dawned on me, I think late last year, and then I was just now thinking about it. These berries are mostly seed. There's a big round seed inside, and they're quite hard. You probably couldn't chew it. But I thought, I wonder if you ground that up, could you make flour with it? And I'll be darned, there's another whole source of flour. And you not only have to use it sparingly, but you can literally grind it up and make your bread with it. Not only that, but of course there's the mesquite beans, the pods that over in the Middle East of the other side of the world, they call it acacia, Africa. It's all over the world. Here we call it, one variety of it is this mesquite. It grows throughout Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, everything. And it's these big bean pods. You can grind them up. You can boil them, make coffee with them too. But you can grind them up, add that to your flour. But what stuck in my mind was these berries. Because they're on the juniper trees most of the year or half the year. I don't know. At first, they're little green berries. Then they ripen and turn pink and purple. And then throughout the fall and into the winter, they're still hanging on the trees. And they're just available. You've got all the time in the world to pick them and to put them in bags or store them somewhere in a cave. And I was thinking, okay, great, Lord, thanks. You gave us some berries, but you can only eat a couple because they're so bitter. And they're not a complete protein. I mean, come on, Lord, this ain't food. What are you doing here to me? Am I supposed to just eat these bitter, weird-looking, nasty berries that aren't healthy, really? I couldn't survive on these alone. Add a little pinyon nuts. They're hard to collect enough of them just by themselves. There's a lot of acorns, but you got to process those, put them in buckets, pour the water out, leave them in the bucket a couple days, pour the water out, and bleach or lance all the toxins that are in there. But, lots of foods are that way. You can't just cook beans. You got to boil them and put salt in it. Nuts are usually roasted. Lots of things. Potatoes have to be cooked. But I thought, okay, we ain't got a whole lot of food around here. But I was happy last year because I was thinking, okay, we got all these acorns and pine nuts. They're, you got to go out and harvest them. It takes hours to put them in bags and go process them. But I was thinking, Lord, look at all these berries, but I can't eat them. You can. You take the whole berry, the sweet bitter part on the outside, and the round seed in the middle. It's very hard. Put them in these little holes, and you grind them with rocks and make flour, and you can literally use that by itself. Although you might want to add some acorn flour with it and maybe pinyon. So this is how, if you just have even a few handfuls of pinyon nuts, you can add that to your other flour to kind of make a more balanced protein or something like this. But most of these foods I'm talking about, as well as the juniper berry, is actually a really good protein, and you can make your flour and not just survive, but be very healthy, eating your breads, eating your food with the wild game that you could get, the fish that you can catch, and all the other things that you can find. And you can live without going to the store. And when you get used to eating it, you'll actually prefer it. Let me show you the nutritional value of these grains after you've ground them up into flour and made bread out of it. So I said to AI, if you grind juniper berries whole into fine flour and make a cake, what are the nutritional benefits of protein, fats, and vitamins? And they say grinding whole juniper berries into a fine flour to use as a primary or supplemental ingredient in a cake provides a concentrated source of dietary fiber, healthy fats, and potent plant-based antioxidants. The exact nutritional values may vary by species, but a general profile for ground dried juniper berries includes protein, contains approximately 4 grams to 19 grams. Fats ranges from 5 grams to 15 grams, largely composed of monounsaturated fats and essential volatile oils. Carbohydrates and fiber. Total carbohydrates range from 25 grams to 60 grams, with a high dietary fiber content up to 45 grams. Vitamins. Primarily rich in vitamin C, supporting immune health and collagen synthesis. And vitamin B, thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin. Minerals, a significant source of calcium, up to 2,000 milligrams in some species. Potassium, magnesium, iron, and zinc. Guys, I'm thinking that even if you don't want to go out and gather juniper berries and acorns and grind them up and make your bread, you ought to at least go out and get some juniper berries and acorns and pine nuts and grind them up and add 1 cup of it to your normal whole wheat flour. No, don't use whole wheat. Buy some einkorn or emmer or, durum or some kind of ancient grain. Rye. Get the rye at Safeway. They've got organic, non-genetically modified rye. It's an ancient grain. It's whole. Get that. And put 1 cup of this juniper berry, acorn, pinyon nut, pollen, pine nut, stem thing, all ground up, and add that to your flour. Instead of anything else, I think what you would be making is, well, you'd be on your way to having a superfood in your diet and just eat all your bread with your regular flour that you buy if you have to, or some good whole grain rye is probably what I would recommend. Maybe you could put some organic white flour in there if you don't like it, and that makes it taste better for you, but at least get some of this in there. Goodness Lord, please help these people understand, Lord, that this is vital to their health. Amen. Thank you. Health and functional benefits. Antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. Juniper berries contain over 70 antioxidants. Guys, most superfoods, they'll say, oh, it's got this particular antioxidant or that particular one or maybe two of them. But no, there are 70 antioxidant compounds, including flavonoids like quercetin and polyphenols, which help neutralize free radicals and reduce inflammation. Guys, modern people, most people living in the city, they don't get any antioxidants, hardly at all, other than a vitamin C tablet from their pill box. Or maybe if they ate a blueberry or something once in a while, but you're going to McDonald's or you're getting box food or canned food or takeout or any packaged food. There's almost no antioxidants, and even the fruits and vegetables that we get don't have that many nutrients and phytochemicals, and those are what they call superfoods. And this is a superfood amongst superfoods. And it's all over the actual food that grows in the wild that you don't want to eat because you don't know how to prepare it, and you think, oh, but it is good. And when you grind it and make a flour and make a cake, my goodness, how could that not be good? Like granola bars or something, But, sometimes we get too much flavor, too many pleasures when we're eating sauces and all this du jour and oui and all of this. And actually, a simple diet, once you get used to it, you will like it. You will like it better. You will be healthy. And how do we know that this isn't the reason? Remember, I was asking AI the other day why people can't live forever, and they're like, oh, it's never been done, so we don't know. But probably not. Because your telomeres get shorter and shorter as you get older, and you don't produce stem cells. Well, yes, we've proven that you do create ions in the brain. You do create stem cells if you eat the right foods and you're healthy, if your liver is healthy. And they're like, well, the liver can't grow back. It's, though the liver regrows every couple of few weeks. But we're not giving it the food. And think about the fact that actual food that I'm talking about grows in the wild has 70 antioxidants, including flavonoids like quercetin, polyphenols, and this helps neutralize free radicals and reduce inflammation. Inflammation is the cause of death. It's not the length of your telomeres, it's the condition of your gut lining, which then goes to the condition of your liver, your pancreas, and your kidneys, and all of this. That's what makes you live, is having a healthy gut. They've said that you can tell how long you have to live, right? By whether or not you can bend over and pick something up off the ground. Somebody who doesn't have long to live cannot bend over. And when they do, they're exhausted just from bending over once and picking something off the ground. And they'll have to bend their knees. They can't literally just bend over. So do the test and see how well you can bend over. And then sometimes you're like, I can do it, no problem. But yeah, you're still feeling a little uncomfortable. You're not healthy unless you can run and jump and do somersaults and stand on your head, guys. And the reason that you could do that, not just because you're young, it's because you're eating right. You could be 70, 80, 90, 100 years old and run around and jump and hike and do all of this if you ate this food. And I'm also going to be doing a video, hopefully after this one, maybe tomorrow, hopefully, because you never know, with all the things going on, there might be a tsunami or an earthquake or the end of the world, before I get to it. And I got to cover that, of course. But I'm really about ready to do a video that will just literally blow your mind, because it's already blown mine. And I mean, my mind gets blown about every diggity dang dong day with this information that I keep getting. It's like these revelations just keep coming. But I've been doing a lot of thought and prayer on what is happiness and what is sadness and what is being. And the Lord's taken me down a path about, let me just say, as a little teaser, it has to do with pain. Somebody was saying that pain is a thing that causes one to separate from some ordeal. So it can make you forget that ordeal, or to block out certain memories. And it has to do with why we don't remember past lives. And I'm beginning to wonder if nature isn't just what it is. This is the world we live in, and this is the right world, the true world. And the Satan world that we're talking about is really society. And this is what I've really believed for a long time. As soon as people begin to go back into nature and live properly, we'll have paradise. But I've often also wondered whether people are supposed to live in one body forever, or whether we are supposed to transition from bodies and transmigrate, but that the process has been damaged over the last thousands of years because of a lot of trauma, because of ignorance, and because of pain that keeps us in this cycle of rebirth, because we don't remember our past. We don't know what's going on. We're being deceived. And there's a lot of stuff that we're being deceived about that you would have no idea it could be that deep. So what immortality is that you remember, you don't have pain or trauma, MK Ultra mind control, to put you in this fetal position or this painful place that is torture, that is karma. And it's not as difficult to get out of this as a lot of these gurus for the last 1,000 years have been telling us, financed by the Rothschilds, because they don't know. But all you got to do is let go of the guilt, get out of society, go back to the right way to eat, the right way to live, the right way to love. And all the pain goes away, and you begin to remember. Be still and know that I am deity. Be still. Like that still small voice within. You got to be quiet. Get out of this rat race. And then you'll begin to wake up. When you wake up, you'll have memories. And when you get ready to die, if that is something that we go through, it's possible. Maybe we live for thousands of years, but at some points we have to transition. But if that's the case, it'll be a ceremony. We won't really die. We'll just let go of one body and go into another body. And there's a whole lot more I want to share with you about this, about an individual who did a ceremony before they died with my great-great-grandmother, Ruth Vose, who made a ceremony that in the next life they would be together and they would produce a child. And this child would be a destined birth. And I'll get into that in another video. But the other thing is and this is just blowing my mind, but I now have pretty much hard proof that this happened with my grandmother, and a particular person that will blow your mind when you find out who it is. But there were, I believe, 12 or 13 individuals that made this sacred covenant. It's actually part of the ancient ceremonies in priesthood from Egypt that was done in around the first part of 1840s, 1842, 1843, 1840, somewhere in there. there were 12 or 13, and we're not sure of the number. I think it was about 12 or 13 ceremonies that were done where a covenant was made with 12 or 13 individual women that were princesses, lineal descendants of Mary Magdalene, that covenanted to come back into the world in the last days and be children of destiny. So I know you're thinking, what? Yeah, this is true. This is serious, and we've got hardcore proof for this. And so, yeah, something else is happening that we've got to talk about, guys. But, for instance, you're being deceived about your own feelings, about memories, or what love is. Love is not, oh, I love you. Oh, I love you. No, you love your children, right? And it's completely different than, somebody you want to spend the rest of your life with, you just met. You love your children, you'd give your life for your children. Most good people would. Not everybody. I guarantee it. I've been, I found out about that because, I had a rude awakening, being thrown out of Jehovah's Witnesses, losing my entire family. But I realize I can't blame them either because they're in trauma. It's a trauma-based MK Ultra mind control that my family, my father, and all of these people are involved in. They don't know who they are. They're in pain. And that pain is divided them from their higher self, from their ability to understand and to be healthy emotionally. But also, I have found out that another thing we've been lied to about is that we shouldn't have any pain. Climbing a mountain makes your legs feel pain, but we do it because we want to get to the top of the mountain. So we would rather have pain if it means getting to the top of the mountain, right? And if we didn't have any pain, it wouldn't be hard to get to the top of the mountain. There wouldn't be any accomplishment. So I'm going to go into that in a video about what life is supposed to be like and how some of this depression people are having, anxiety and problems, is they're causing it by being in the city, by being in this world, by not understanding their own mind and their own thoughts and what pain is. It's a way that your body and your mind is telling you that what you're doing is not correct. But you still want to live. You want to live if you think that you're going to eventually get to the top of the mountain. That it's hard. Oh, it's hard, but you want to get to your goal is to reach some advancement. And then, yeah, it's going to be hard. We live in a world where it's hard building a house, but boy, oh boy, you sure want to build that house. You feel such gratitude and such appreciation and thanks and satisfaction is the word I'm trying to come up with for building it. You just feel such peace and genuine satisfaction. It's the glory that we seek is to be able to get through the difficult times and overcome them. So we're under the delusion we're never supposed to be unhappy. There's two parts to that. One, we're unhappier than we ought to be because we're never getting to the goal because we're being abused by the system, by the government. And we're not being told that pain is normal, but that we're supposed to not live in a grinder, right? Or a rock compactor or a garbage disposal. We're supposed to be living in the world that the Lord provided for us. And then we're much happier. But even in that paradise, there's going to be difficulties. And we're going to have to climb mountains. And there's going to be things we have to overcome. But there's a lot more to it, guys, that makes a person happy and alive. Nobody that I know of ever accomplishes anything. Their biggest accomplishment is, look at my house. Oh, well, you built that? No. Contractors built it out of toilet paper and chalkboard, right? There it is, right? But don't breathe on it. It might fall over. It's just a mansion. It's not a real living home that we were supposed to build with rocks and timbers and and tile and marble and you know, beautiful cathedrals like they used to build, like the Tartarians, you know. Oh, and this is another video that I got to do probably after the one I just mentioned that I want to do. Maybe we'll just do this subject for a while because we got a lot of subjects inside the subjects. So today we're doing about food and how to survive and eat and be healthy, but maybe tomorrow we're going to do what pain is and stuff and how to live forever. But then, have you ever heard this? And I'm going to tell you something that everybody knew. Maybe 100 years ago, everybody knew this. And probably 50 years ago, a lot of people knew this. But I don't think that anyone knows this today. This is another piece of our understanding and wisdom that's been completely removed. You know, like we talked about with all the herbs and stuff, we don't know what to eat. Well, did you know? You probably heard of people that used to take a pan, get into the river, get down into the under the rocks and get some of the gravel and put it in the pan, and they would pan for gold. And they would pan, and there'd be some little gold flakes, and they'd pull it out, and it was the gold rush days. And all anybody was interested back in the 1840s was gold, so they didn't really know anything else. But 1,000 years ago, they knew what this process was. They weren't just playing around like pretend little gold miners, just after money. That's all they were after in the 1840s. And that's what the old timers learned to do, was pan for gold. And they were good at it. But they were also ignorant fools because they didn't know that they were being lied to about what they were doing, that it was far more complicated, or, well, it's easy, but there's a lot more to it than just panning for gold. Because gold only accounts for about 1 or less than 1%. I think it's like 0.01% of the minerals that are in the rivers. In the river, the most rare thing you can find is gold, yes. The second most rare thing is silver. And there are other metals, lots of different metals. I'm going to explain these metals and the percentages that you'll find them in. But let's start with what is most abundant. And nobody even knows about this today. My dad was a gold miner, and he'd done everything, trapper, hunter. I don't know if he knows this. I'd love to ask him to see if he even knows. But, anyway, the most prevalent thing, if you're panning for gold, and way before you get down to the very, very, very bottom, you might find a gold flake. You start pulling off the rocks and the sand on top, and you get down to this thing that looks black. It's very fine, black, metallic stuff. And invariably, whenever you're panning, you're going to see the black stuff. And most people just like, oh, throw that away. That's not worth anything. That's iron. And it can be taken, put in a fire, but it takes like 2,000 degrees to smelt it. But it's something you can make tools with. That's very important. Shovels and knife blades and all of this. Of course, it has to be pounded and purified, and there's a little bit of a process, but it can be done quite easily. You do it with charcoal that you get out of the fire, wood, and then that causes it to lump up and to make these little clumps, and then you got to beat it, get it hot and beat it, and you can make it into knives. But after you get through this magnetite, which is iron ore, you start finding lead, and there's a way you could distinguish between the lead and the magnetite. And then after lead, you'll find less quantities of zinc, and then you'll find copper. That is going to be a little bit, you'll find a little bit of copper, and less than that, you'll find a little bit of silver. And far less than that, you'll find a little gold. So people spend years up in the mountains trying to find gold. It's all they're looking for. And they're throwing all this magnetite and all this copper and silver away. And it's a lot of these metals are in abundance. And In a lot of ways, when you're out there in the woods, the most important thing is that magnetite, which is abundant. You can pan several days and get enough of that to make a tool, a knife blade, a hatchet, a shovel, hammer, all the things that you might need. You don't need modern technology for making tools, guys. And they knew how to smelt iron and where to get it and copper and all of this stuff. You add tin. I forgot tin. Tin's pretty abundant. You add the tin that you find with your copper and you make bronze so it can be used. It's a harder substance than it can be used for tools. But they knew about all of this smelting and bronze and this kind of thing thousands of years ago, and they made great, amazing things with it. Nowadays, if you didn't have society, you wouldn't have a tool. You have no concept. I don't know that the natives understood. Most of the ones running around out here didn't pan for metals and they didn't make tools. They used flint to make their arrowheads. So they didn't know this. This has been lost for people in America or in the world for probably 1,000 years. And now you know, and we'll talk about that too, because that's going to be important if we're going to go back to the way things ought to be. And so we're being fooled that we're living in some kind of amazing luxury. Look at my Lamborghini. Yeah, but that's only for now. A year down the road, it's in the shop. And you ain't got the money to fix that. And your life is going to go down the hill quick. It's just pleasure. We're being fooled. And I think I've got some answers that you'll really enjoy in an upcoming video. But let's get to talking about how we physically could even live in the real world. There ain't no water out there in the desert, Dave. Well, I'll show you how you can get water. You don't need to stand under a scalding shower for 3 hours, 5 times a day with harsh chemicals and detergents and poisons and toxins and burning your skin right off your bones. That's not normal. You're supposed to bathe in cold water or water that's running down in the creek or the river. You've heard of people that dunk in ice water. Well, yeah, it's not good to be soaking in hot water unless you're in mineral water because you're opening your pores. And so when you open your pores, you're going to be sweating. But if you're opening your pores and being scalded by some kind of chemical toxic water, that's the opposite of what you need to be doing. So you really only need to bathe periodically in a stream or a fountain of water. And the daily thing that you need to do is simply get a rag and put it in some warm water and wash your armpits in various places. And you don't need all these chemicals and deodorants that are poison for you. By the way, men and women actually prefer the pheromones and hormones and the smells that are natural. Just saying. Oh, yeah. I was digressing, I guess. We got to go back to what we're saying, and I got to finish this. We're all about done here. Digestive aid, they act as bitters, stimulating digestive enzymes and bile flow, which can help reduce gas and bloating often associated with heavy desserts. Metabolic support. Research suggests they may have anti-diabetic properties. Oh, so maybe diabetes isn't a disease, but it's a lack of nutrition. It's a lack of eating food. Ever thought of that? It stimulates insulin secretion and potentially lowering the blood sugar levels. And you hear that a lot, like potentially and lowering the level. And you're like, yeah, that don't work, right? It lowers it, but you still got diabetes. Nope. If you ate this and you didn't eat poison, it wouldn't just lower it, guys. You'd be healthy. You'd be well. And I think you'd live forever. This is my theory. And guys, I'm about to test it. If Jesus comes back here very soon, we're good to go. But shortly, I may just head out into the woods. I'm really thinking that just sitting around here doing these videos might not be doing a lot of people much good. Nobody seems to be watching anymore, but I do know the Lord wants me to continue to do these videos, but I just feel like I need personally to get outside. So I may take my phone with me and just go and just take off. You know, I'm all alone now here again. And so there's nothing stopping me from just taking my dogs and my cat, because she's going to go with me too, and a backpack and my 2 feet, and live exclusively and completely off the grid. Period. I'll still own my place and I can come back and visit, but I'm going to just take off here soon. I don't know when, but I'm thinking about it and I'm planning it. And I want to learn on my route and what I'm, as I go, I'm going to live in caves and shelters and lean-tos and things that I can build. I'll learn how to do a lot of that, and I'll learn how to eat these things that I'm talking about and live off of it exclusively. And we'll see what it does to my health. I'll bet you, I just bet you, that the Lord's good. I bet you He is. I bet you the world's a great, beautiful, wonderful paradise. It's just that we're like, we don't want that paradise. We want to live in a city, right? In Satan's world. Don't give me that paradise crap, Dave. All right, well, I'm going to go with a paradise. And, I think at first it's like getting over heroin. It's a little hard to do at first. But once you get off that stuff and you're free of it and you're not addicted to these harmful things, your life is way better, you see. Now, it'd be great if I had somebody that could go with me and I wouldn't be alone out there in the middle of nowhere. I'll have my dogs, my cat, but, I guess you do what you gotta do. It doesn't seem like anybody in the world seems to want to just really live. Imagine 10 years into the future, guys. 20 years, whatever you want. And imagine having lived 10, 20 years with all the adventures that I'm going to have when I do this. And now say, okay, but what about if I'd stayed in the city and I had to go and do that grind every day? What if I had $1 million and I was living in the city driving a Porsche or a Lamborghini and we were doing the party and all that, And of course your back would be out half the time and you wouldn't feel good. You'd be in the hospital part of the time or eventually. And heartaches and troubles and anxiety. No, thank you. I think we're missing the picture, guys. But look at this. Research suggests that they may have anti-diabetic properties, stimulating insulin secretion, potentially lowering blood sugar. Kidney and urinary health, they function as a natural diuretic, helping the body flush excess fluids and waste products. Important precautions. If you're pregnant, be careful. Kidney conditions, well, guess what? If you ate a little of it, it would probably heal your kidneys, then you wouldn't have that problem. But if you're already dying, it's difficult for the body to, when you're on heroin and you're dying, just to go cold turkey. Sometimes you got to go slow. Flavor intensity. Juniper has a very strong, resinous, and pine-like flavor. Using it as 100% of your flour may result in an overpowering medicinal tasting cake. It is often best used as a partial flour substitute or a spice. So you see, probably what you're supposed to do, if you look out here, you're like, well, wait a minute. If I grind up these acorns, that's not quite what I want. Or how about the pinyon nuts? Well, they're all right. But, look at all these, but look at all these juniper berries. Millions and tons of them. Oh, and look at the pine needles and the pine coat. Well, maybe if we ground them all up and put them together, we'd have a balanced, perfect food. So I'll put my acorns and my pinions and my male pollen, pieces that we're talking about with on the firs and the pinyon trees, and the juniper berries that I grind, put them all in a big bucket and stir it around, and then make my cakes with that. And, at first, if you think, well, it's a little overpowering, I'm not sure I like it, got to get used to it. Okay, well, how about go get some einkorn flour from the store? If you have any money, you could buy like a 10-pound bag of that and just put 1 cup of that in with the rest of this stuff. and get used to it. But I think once you get used to it, you're going to like it. Now, look, I'm only speculating because I haven't done this yet. This is what I'm going to do. But anyway, I'm coming up to an hour, so I'm going to leave it here and get this loaded. But guys, we're going to do a few more videos. I think we're talking spring, and I'm out of here. I'm, unless, of course, the Lord shows me something that I need to do differently. But look, I do think that probably the Great Tribulation's already begun. And I have property here that we own, and we could park here, and we can do that. But I think some of us are going to have to put our big boy britches on and let's do this and learn how to live and be an example to everyone else. So anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. You know the Lord loves you, and you know His grace and His peace will be with you. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.